This is Luke Iorio, and here's this week's Meaningful Moment. There's this great quote by Blaise Pascal. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Now, ironically, when I first read this quote, I was on my smartphone with the news running on the TV in the background and an open book to my left. And my mind was merely counting down the seconds until I started to hear that little chirping of dad, daddy, dad, dad, daddy, right? The idea of sitting quietly or being quiet with the notion of quieting my mind was something that used to seem absolutely impossible. I used to tell myself that may work for some people, that may be good for them, but that's not for me. It's not how my mind works. My mind is too busy. There's too many thoughts. There's too much to know or learn or think about, which would lead me to not having or making the time. I needed to use my time to get this project done or to start the next project because heaven forbid I wouldn't have enough dozens of projects running simultaneously. I had a business partner who once said that I operated in a state of blissful overwhelm. At the time, I took it as a compliment. But believe me, blissful ignorance, which is really what blissful overwhelm is all about, that blissful ignorance will catch up to you every time as it did to me. As far as I knew and had ever had experiences with, that silence and stillness, that's when that stirring, that craving, the wanting, that restlessness would set in. And those feelings which drive you to be uncomfortable lead you to want to stay in motion or just stay busy in some way, even with your thoughts. The problem, as I later realized, was that stirring, that craving, that restlessness, whatever it is, those were not there to get me to move. They were there because whatever it was that was coming up, it didn't want to deal with what was underneath. And so I finally realized that what was underneath wasn't really actually all that bad. It was just unsettled. You see, being quiet at first, it can create a lot of noise in your head. And as you notice the thousands of thoughts that are flying around like a shaken snow globe, you start to get caught up in that. But if you develop your ability to sit in that space, to not get caught up in that whirl of the snow globe, to even enjoy the beauty and the motion of that chaos, that's when you actually begin to settle. It's when you begin to quiet. When you do that, that's all of a sudden when everything begins to settle. Just like the snow globe, because your thoughts are no longer there, shaking it up even further. What I can tell you is this, is that when you don't develop the ability to sit quietly in a room alone, a few things are ultimately going to occur. You'll never reflect, or certainly never get to the core, the true answers of what it is that you're looking for, but you'll never reflect on knowing whether or not you're even going in the direction that you want to be going. You'll stay on the same track, but that track goes in circles, and then you're going to wonder why it is that you're not getting to some other destination. Hey, dummy, you chose the track, and the dummy was me. I did this for a long time. And part of it is that also when you don't sit quietly with yourself, you never realize that you're not your thoughts. You see, thoughts are just the products of your brain. Just like the heart pumps blood and the lungs pump air, your brain pumps thoughts. And those thoughts are not all equally checked, vetted, qualified, or otherwise. They are just thoughts. And when you create some space, some separation between your thoughts, you can begin to consider, wait a minute, who's doing the thinking? Or deeper still, who is noticing me doing the thinking? Because you're so much more, there's so much more of who you are that's actually behind the thoughts. And questions like that, when you create that space, will allow you to dig deeper into whatever that consciousness or true self really is, so you can really get in touch with the essence of who you are. The other thing is that when you can't sit quietly, when you can't find that stillness, you're even more likely to fall into the happy when syndrome. And come on, you know what this one is. I'll be happy when I get that promotion, when I take that vacation, when I get that car, when we buy that new home, when I put X amount of money in the bank. But it never really comes, does it? Or at least it's incredibly fleeting, because I'll tell you that was the view of my life. I lived in that state of blissful overwhelm so that I'd always have the next thing, so that I could tell myself my last accomplishment, it gave me the feeling of happiness, but because I had more to do, it's no wonder that it passed so quickly. That's okay. Yeah, right. The reality was that I needed the next thing because I thought it was some event or accomplishment or some other magic wizard was going to bestow happiness on me for some event that had occurred. I never stopped long enough to look in the one place where happiness, where joy always and only ever is: inside. You begin to find that joy and happiness within when you begin to prioritize what matters most, when you even know what matters most. And how do you even know if you can't sit quietly, still, long enough to investigate your thoughts? And so you find that your joy is truly within when you can fully experience the moment that you're in, when you can be present with your life and what's unfolding right then and there. Learning to be still, to sit quietly with and within myself, it felt like it gave me this superpower to have an experience and know that I'm actually even in a meaningful moment at that time. To know how to pause and to fully feel and sense the moment that I was in. To feel the joy, the gratitude, the love, and yes, even the pain and the sorrow at times. To know how to listen deeply, fully, not just with my ears, but with my heart, to my wife, my children, my dearest friends, and even just that person who I don't know real well, but in that moment, they needed someone to hear them, to see them, to acknowledge them, so that they knew that they mattered and that things will get better. Learning to sit still made it possible for me to enjoy the absolute chaos of a young child's t-ball game, to even enjoy the end-of-year school concert with 400 crying younger siblings and hundreds of students that look like they're being marched off to a firing squad instead of a sing-along. I've actually found beauty and even stillness in those moments, but it comes from that practice of sitting in quiet. I never would have noticed it. I never would have felt them. I never would have saw the meaning, the peace, the joy, even just the fun of those moments had I not taken the time to explore and even build that muscle of being quiet and being still. That stillness and quiet helps in so many ways. When stress kicks up, when that inner critic rages loudly in your head, when a friend or a colleague invites you to an argument, because without the quiet, without knowing how to take that pause, without being okay with that silence and stillness for a moment, I know for myself, I was very willing to accept that argument invite over and over and over again, not seeing it for what it was. Instead, when you gain that ability to be quiet, when you create that pause, when you create that moment where you can really truly be mindful and grab hold of what's going on, that's when you can realize that even in that moment of getting invited to an argument, you can show up in a completely different way. You can communicate and connect with them based on understanding and curiosity and seeing where it is that things can be bridged back together again. So to have more meaningful moments, I'd like to invite you to pause. Pause just 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. And in those moments, breathe in deeply at least 3 times. Build up to maybe even 7 or 10 breaths. Be mindful of your inhale and your exhale. As you inhale, pull in your senses, what you hear and feel and see and smell and even taste in that moment. Inhale all of what your senses are picking up into a peaceful silence. It's that silence from which your breath even arises. And then exhale slowly and fully until all of the air is out of your lungs. And with that exhale, feel yourself putting joy and gratitude and warmth and good wishes out into the environment around you. Finally, when you're ready for your last breath, of each mini break that you take during the day, take that breath for yourself. Inhale that peace and warmth and hold on to it. And let that exhale melt away any tension or stress. Let it just fall off of you as you exhale. With just 3 breaths, this is going to take you less than 60 seconds. If you expand yourself all the way to 10 breaths, this is going to take you just 4 minutes. So take this week. See if you can do that exercise, that meaningful breath, that meaningful quiet, that meaningful stillness for just a minute or 2 at a time. Do that a minimum of 3 times a day. And if you can, build up to doing it even more often if you want or need to. Whenever you feel a bit stressed, a bit off, a bit tired, or when you're switching hats or roles, jumping from one thing to the next, that's a great time to do this exercise. The more that we become comfortable with being quiet and sitting alone, the more that we will bring that into our present moment and the more it will help us navigate all the different circumstances of our lives. And so until next time, as always, continue to enjoy the moment.